Hey listeners, this is a rerun, or as I like to call it, a TAC Reload preamble. You might be hearing more of these. And I'm just going to be real with you. I've been doing this podcast for a lot of years. I've been doing it full time for about 2. I was hoping to grow it into a full-time income. I said I'd give it a year, and I've given it 2. I've cashed out retirement accounts. I've cashed out Bitcoin. Lived off of savings while trying to grow the podcast, and it has grown by God's grace by leaps and bounds, but it has not yet become a full-time income. There's a time to spend and a time to save, Ecclesiastes says. So I will be taking on some private contracting work, have gun, will travel, which means, especially by God's grace, pretty soon I'll be entering in some pretty strenuous training as far as the schedule goes, so you're probably going to get some more reruns. If you don't go back and listen to old episodes, maybe they'll be new to you. But I just wanted to give you a heads up and be real with you as to what's going on. As Ecclesiastes says, there's a time to spend and a time to save. Hopefully we'll build back up some savings and still be able to get out a podcast pretty regularly. I've been doing about a podcast a day for a long time. A lot of podcasts only do a podcast a week. So hopefully you will bear with me. I will try and get the patrons more special insider-only content as they get already. I don't want to leave them out to dry. They're the ones that step up and support the podcast, and I really hope that they feel they're getting their money's worth. But if not, no hard feelings. I will try and keep up on the Patreon stuff, but you guys may see a little bit of a drop-off, at least periodically, depending on schedule, on new episodes. You'll still get new episodes, maybe just not one a day. So enjoy this Tactical Reload episode. What is going on, gunfighters? Shotguns as truck guns. Save the best for 5th. This is the 5th episode installment of Truck Guns here on Gunfighter Life. If you've stumbled across this as the first episode you've listened to, welcome. But hopefully you're liked and subscribed, following whatever vernacular they use on whatever platform you listen to. Hopefully you're following the show. Since this is part 5, I'm going to forego the lengthy bio and just say first and foremost, I am a Christian, made in the image of God. Hopefully I look at everything through a Christian and biblical lens and worldview. This podcast will be no different. And again, if you've just clicked on this one, we've done a whole series on truck guns. I did an episode in Days of Yore on truck guns, and it seems to be very popular still, and I got a request to do more. And I thought the best way to do it would be to break it down in segments. So part 1 was handguns, and then also did PCCs, PDWs, fighting carbines, intermediate carbines. Today, part 5 is going to be shotguns for truck guns. Why? Why, with all those other options, would you pick a shotgun? Well, I think for a lot of people, for a lot of situations, it's the best choice. And we'll get into why. Now, again, hopefully you're liking and subscribing to the show. But if you're fairly new, you can go back and look at, just type in shotgun, a Gunfighter Life shotgun on whatever podcast platform, and it should pull up several episodes on the shotgun, whichever one tickles your fancy, as the baby boomers might say, and listen to that. But to give a brief recap, in my opinion, the shotgun is the most versatile small arm, period. End of sentence. It is the most versatile small arm, period. Nothing else does what the shotgun can do. Nothing else is as flexible as the shotgun is. Nothing else can go from plucking a dove or a fat little quail out of the air, God-given protein bars, and being able to eat them, to stopping a charging grizzly bear. No other single weapon can perform like that, and all manner of things in between, from deer to personal protection and defense to barrier penetration to even other roles like breaching and less lethal, signaling. Nothing is as flexible as the shotgun. So I guess my question is, why would you not want a weapon that versatile, that powerful, that devastating, that scalable up or down as a truck gun? So to be fair, be honest and circumspect, what are some shortcomings of the shotgun? Well, a big one people would say is range. Now, if you talking smoothbore shotgun, rifled barreled shotguns are kind of a specialty thing. But if you look at a smoothbore shotgun, if you don't just buy whatever slugs are available at Walmart and you actually do your due diligence like you would with a rifle and find a good load that groups well, that shoots point of aim, point of impact, if you have decent sights, not just a smooth barrel, but like a decent sighting system on your shotgun, I'd say you should easily be able to achieve 150 yards, practical accuracy on a shotgun. They do have a limited range. I mean, 150 yards is about half of practical effective range for an M4 carbine, run-of-the-mill M4 AR-15 16-inch variant. And I've posed this question to you guys before. Show me any defensive, civilian, justified use of force encounter where somebody projected force and it was legal and lethal out past 150 yards. I don't know of any, and if I'm not going to put the bio in this episode, but I've spent a lifetime as a professional gunfighter, military, law enforcement, private contractor. Hear CONUS talking about defensive and breaking contact kind of situations. In general, 150 yards is way more than is normal. But they do have a limited range. That is a real thing. Also, people will say capacity. And yeah, if you look at it round per round, if you're talking round per round, like cartridge per cartridge, primer indentation to primer indentation, then yeah, the shotgun has less capacity, for sure. You know, your standard run-of-the-mill AR-15 or AK-47 variant is going to have 30 rounds on tap. The shotgun is going to have 5 for a standard hunting shotgun, maybe 7, maybe 9, if you're talking about a tactical shotgun, if you're looking at it that way. But I'm going to maybe suggest you might want to look at it a different way. And if you decide doesn't really matter, that's fine. But I want to present it a different way. Your AR-15 223 is 22 caliber. Now, it's not apples to apples. It's apples to oranges because you're talking about a Spitzer bullet. You're talking about higher velocity. But you're talking 22 caliber, 30 projectiles. If you look at my favorite go-to hunting and defensive load for the shotgun, 41 pellet number 4 buck. Number 4 buck, I believe, if memory serves correct, is 24 caliber. Now, each one of those shells is going to have more capacity than the entire magazine of an AR-15. But if we do 41 times, and I looked up what the Mossberg 590 holds, and that is 7 plus 1, which would be 8 of the 3-inch magnums. So we do 41 times 8 equals 328 rounds. If you're talking about actual projectiles downrange, 24 caliber, and you're talking about a spherical lead, either nickel-plated or copper-coated or just straight lead sphere. So it's not the same as a Spitzer bullet, but to maybe put it in a different light, you're talking 328 actual individual projectiles in that loadout. If you're talking about that loaded up with number 4 buck. If you talk about kind of a lot of people's favorite military police defensive load, 9 pellets of double aught buck, which is going to be a 2 3/4 inch load, a standard load, 12 gauge. You're talking 9 rounds of that times 9 pellets. You're talking over 200 projectiles, and that's 33 caliber. So if you compare that to the AK, which is, we think 30 caliber, but it's actually .312, so 31 caliber versus 33 caliber. And again, not apples to apples, but you're talking 210 actual individual projectiles. So if you look at it from that perspective, maybe not as low capacity as you might think. Also, what are you expecting to encounter? Yeah, if you are expecting to go full red dawn, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be prepared for that, but is that what's most likely going to happen with you and your truck gun? I don't know. I'm not telling you to not be prepared for red dawn, but shy of running around and peeing in radiators and fighting parachuting Cubans or North Koreans, depending on which version you like the best. Right, shy of that, a shotgun with a full loadout of, let's say, double alt buck if you want to go the vanilla route, or you want number 4 buck, or even number 1 buck if you want to kind of go and split the difference, or you want a combination of buckshot and slugs, which I would suggest for a truck gun. That's good out to 150 yards. That round per round is absolutely devastating, more so than any small arm that's common, period, unless you talk about like a 50 BMG or something. But yeah, if you're talking about just round per round, then it's got fairly low capacity. If you talk about, again, 5 to 9 actual primer indentations per loadout versus 30 or 15, depending on what other platform you're running. And if you look at it in that light, then yeah, it's got less capacity, and that's a real thing. And also the range, but has there ever been a defensive justified use of force by a civilian in a defensive role out past 150 yards? I don't know of any. If you do, let me know. But to be fair, there are some limitations. Again, range and capacity. Also, let's be real. A lot of people are into guns because guns are fun to shoot, and I have a lot of fun shooting guns. You know what I don't have a lot of fun doing? Going out to the range and shooting a bunch of full-power buckshot or slugs. I like to shoot. I shoot a lot, as you might imagine. But what I don't actually enjoy is going and putting, let's say, 20 rounds of deep penetrator slugs through my Mossberg 590 in a day. That's not my idea of a good time. I'm not a sadist. I'm not a masochist. I'll endure pain if it is beneficial. Going to the gym, going on a ruck, going for a run, lifting heavy weights. Pain just for the sake of pain is not super enjoyable. Again, I don't consider it enjoyable to shoot 20 rounds of slugs in a row. Because I'll go to the range and, I'd have a lot of fun going through a brick of 22 ammo. Or even, a couple of hundred rounds of 9mm or 223. But 20 rounds of slugs and I'm not having a great time. So they are less fun to train with and less fun to shoot. Case in point, I think the shotgun is the most versatile weapon. If I've said it before, if I could only have one gun for when things hit the fan, peanut butter and chocolate has hit the fan, and I got to pick one long gun, no other caveats, no other yeah but this, yeah but that, I'd pick the shotgun. However, it's probably the gun I train with the least as far as live fire goes. One, because from my experience, if you're a really good handgun shooter, you're probably a good rifle or shotgun shooter, but you can be a really good rifle shooter or shotgun shooter and be really horrible at the handgun. And the handgun is what I have on me most of the time, which is why I switched way back in the day to I switched from more precision rifle stuff to handgun, because handgun is the hardest gun to master, and it's the gun that I have on me most of the time. That said, of all the things I train with, I probably train with the shotgun less because it's less fun to shoot. So that is a disadvantage. Also, reloading when the gun is empty. Now, there are ways to quickly reload, and that is something I do train on and encourage you to train on, like rounds from the side saddle into the action. You can feed a shotgun pretty fast that way. It's not as fast as, let's say, a speed reload on a handgun, where you're out and you do a quick reload in a standard capacity magazine. You got a fresh 15 or 17 or 21 round magazine. So that's a disadvantage. And is that likely? No, it's not, but it's possible. But again, you're not talking apples to apples, because round per round, that shotgun is way more devastating. There's very little comparison to a round of 9mm to a full payload of double aught or number 4 buck out of a 12 gauge or even a 20 gauge. So just think about it honestly and circumspectly. Also, I guess I should have mentioned it because I'm looking out at a pretty nasty environment here it's beautiful, but like rainy, wet, Juneau, Alaska. The shotgun is made for some of the nastiest environments on the planet. You talk about nasty environments, talk about waterfowl hunting, duck hunting, goose hunting. You're talking about snow blowing sideways, freezing rain, sleet, salt water, guns getting submerged, guns getting used as canoe paddles, just mud, just saltwater marsh mud and swamp mud and just nasty environments. The shotguns work in those environments, and they will work a lot of times for generations in those environments. You talk about a shotgun for nasty environments. If it can handle that, it can probably handle a little bit of neglect in your trunk or in the back of your truck. Also, if you're talking about a tool for peanut butter and chocolate hitting the fan that you can go in a lot of nasty environments without a lot of maintenance, the shotgun really shines there. So just its ability to thrive in rugged, nasty environments is almost unparalleled, especially if you talk about a good inertia-driven semi-auto or especially a pump shotgun. Talk about the AK as being crazy, rugged, and reliable, and they are, especially for a auto-loading battlefield rifle. But I'd say for just pure austere environments, the pump-action shotgun, a good one, is really hard to beat. So you have that advantage. Also, and I've kind of changed my mind on this because I guess we're all influenced by our training and experience. I grew up as a poor boy in the South, putting meat on the table literally. And when it comes to putting meat on the table, as in hunting, nothing rivals the shotgun. You know, there are better deer rifles, there are better elk rifles, but it's not just about that. It's about the totality of things to hunt. Nothing is like the shotgun in that you can pluck a dove out of the air or a quail and also stop a charging grizzly bear and anything in between. The shotgun is that scalable. And with my background, you might imagine that I've been in some pretty nasty situations that God's gotten me through in tactical environments. And those are scary, crazy situations. But even with all that experience that I've been blessed to live through, it pales in comparison to the number of times in my life I've had to eat. You know, unless you're fasting for Yom Kippur or some religious reason or health reason, you probably eat every day. You probably eat several times a day. When it comes to putting food on the table, nothing rivals a shotgun. So if you have to, if that truck gun turns into a long-term survival gun, again, I don't think anything rivals a shotgun if you're going to hunt. But again, I've changed my mind on this recently because I got to realize that I'm kind of an odd duck, and I'm okay with that. I'm a peculiar person, and I'm okay with that. I hunt. I like to hunt for food. But a big chunk of the population lives in what I will call people hives. They live in large urban areas. They live in suburbs. They live in cul-de-sacs. They live in, again, what I will call people hives. To them, it's not food, a lot of them, unless it comes wrapped in cellophane. Meat comes wrapped in cellophane from Safeway or Kroger or wherever. A lot of people have never hunted. They don't know how to hunt. They're not going to learn to hunt. The time to learn to hunt is probably not the apocalypse when you're starving to death. Hunting can be very challenging even when you have hunted your whole life, as I'm getting humbled here in Alaska hunting. Right, so maybe that's not even on the table for a lot of people. The fact that it is a great hunting gun, maybe it's not even applicable to a large chunk of people that have grown up most of their lives in a suburb or a large urban area. And I've spent big chunks of my life in large urban areas. I was LAPD. I was a commander of a tactical team in a big metro area to stop active shooters. I get living in cities. My idea would be to get out of the city and hunt. But again, I know how to hunt. By God's grace, I've hunted all over this beautiful country. I've taken all manner of beasts. I've been a professional big game hunter and guide. I have a Rhodesian Ridgeback, Alexander Hamilton, great hunting breed. If you don't hear him now, he is successfully hunting and killing a squeaky toy. But I'm about hunting, but not everybody is. Again, that's not applicable to everybody. So even if you take that off the table, even if you take the ability to, as a shotgun, to put food on the table, which I think is unrivaled, even with that, there's a lot of flexibility to the shotgun and why you might choose it as a truck gun. Talk about a break contact gun to put a lot of projection of force downrange quickly. Again, if you don't look at it just round count, but you look at the devastation of each individual round, like a full payload of double-aught buck or number 4 buck, you talk about stopping a vehicle or stopping somebody in a vehicle. There are few things that are as good at that as A deep penetrator slug, I like true ball, deep penetrator slugs for several reasons. But even just a regular Foster slug is a good penetrating round, or something like a Bernanke slug, which is kind of legendary for its penetration. You talk about stopping, going into an engine block, or going through intermediate barriers, which in an urban environment is a big thing, right? A good construction of a shotgun slug is pretty hard to beat. Also, urban environments are full of a lot of locked doors. Now, to be honest, as somebody that's been a professional door kicker, most doors are just there for show. You can kick open most doors if you're a healthy adult male. But even the ones that you can't, if you have a shotgun and you know how to use breaching rounds, because I wouldn't advise it if you don't, because you could really hurt yourself, lose some fingers or eyeball or something. But if you know what you're doing with a breaching round, you kind of have a master key. If you're trying to get out of an area that's on fire, or who knows what situation and a dystopian urban future might hold, if you're trying to get out of an area, get through a gate, whatever the case might be, right? You kind of have a master key. Also, less lethal. Taking a human life is a weighty matter. And even if it's legal, you should never take a human life unless it's morally justifiable. And you know what's morally justifiable by reading your Bible, men. You got to have a firm foundation. I hope you're not a psychopath. I'm certainly not a psychopath. I've been in some nasty situations, and I can say, unless you absolutely have to take a human life, you should not, unless it's the best thing to do in that situation. It's the most loving thing to do in that situation, as in stopping other people's from losing their lives, like an active shooter or something like that. But you should know when deadly force is moral and authorized and when it's not. And again, you get that by reading the Bible. The shotgun, unlike many other weapons, gives you the ability to project force that's not lethal force. So I can still project force, but it might not be lethal. And it's not just one option, you get many. You can get rubber buckshot, and if you know what you're doing and with angles, and if you've trained with it, you can, skip those rounds off the ground and take out people from the knee down with less lethal buckshot. If you're talking about rioting, looting, property crimes, just deterring a whole group of people from coming your way. Your rubber buckshot, you also have rubber baton rounds, you have beanbag rounds, which can be quite nasty. So that ability for less lethal, that's a big deal. So even if you take the hunting off the table, which is a big chunk of why the shotgun is such a utilitarian tool in my opinion, it's still very utilitarian. Let's talk about a couple of really good choices. Now, I think equally semi-autos and pump shotguns, and that's really what's on the table. I don't advise you to go through the apocalypse or have your truck gun be a double-barrel shotgun unless that's all you have. But for repeatable firepower today, really the pump and the semi-auto, and I like them both. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. But in my opinion, a good, reliable semi-auto is expensive. I do not trust my life, and I would not recommend a cheap semi-auto shotgun. But there are many cheap, very affordable pump shotguns that have a reasonable rate of fire, that even have advantages over a very expensive semi-auto, that are very affordable. The number one recommendation for pump shotguns is going to be the Mossberg Maverick kind of genre. Whether you're talking about, it's the Mossberg 500 family, whether you're talking about the standard Mossberg 500 or the cheaper Maverick 88 or the more tactical Mossberg 590 or the 835, right? Any of those are just beasts in rugged reliability and affordability and the amount of firepower you get for the money. And there are many other really good pump shotguns. If I'm talking semi-autos, I'd say stick with Benelli for a lot of reasons. There are some really good other guns that are reliable, but they're mostly gas guns, and I prefer an inertial system. I've talked about that in other episodes at nausea. But good pump shotguns, there are other ones. If you can find an older, sadly, I can't recommend anything new, and even probably anything from the mid-90s or late 90s up from Remington. But if you can find a really old Police Magnum or really old Wingmaster 870, those are great guns. There are other good pump shotguns. I would say really look hard at the Mossberg. There's not a lot that rivals those for the money. One of the few ones that would be the Benelli Nova, Supernova. They're their pump action version, and quite a bit less expensive than their semi-autos. I'm not going to list every semi-auto. Those would be my main choices if I were picking one today. My actual go-tos, and I have two, is a Benelli M2, and I've run the gambit of Benelli from the M1 to the M2 to the M4. For the best balance all-around shotgun, I like the Benelli M2. I've got a whole episode. I got an episode coming out on Mossberg pump shotguns and an episode coming out on Benelli semi-autos. I don't know if they'll come out before or after this, but again, make sure you're liked and subscribed and following. That way you can hear about them when they come out, or go back and search. Just type in whatever Gunfighter Life / or Gunfighter Life and then whatever shotgun or Benelli, and you can kind of find those episodes. But my two go-tos are the Benelli M2 and the Mossberg 590S. I denote the S because it allows you to shoot short shells. I like the short shells. I like the ability to run short shells and not just put an adapter in and run short shells, but the ability to load a 3-inch Magnum, a 2 3/4, a short shell, or vice versa, and they'll all run equally well. And the Mossberg 590S is the only shotgun I'm aware of that'll let you do that. No, I am not a fan of bullpup shotguns for a lot of reasons. Now, there's many good shotguns, but any of those good choices. Maybe talk about the truck gun kind of loadout for this. Your good shotgun, and again, I'm mostly talking 12 gauge, but 20 gauge is also a good option, especially, well, there's advantages to the 20 gauge. You know, the ammunition is, in general, lighter and takes up less space. You could carry more of it. And let's say a good Bernanke 20 gauge shotgun slug is still devastating. A good proper buckshot round in 20 gauge, although it's less of a payload than 12 gauge, is still a devastating round. So 20 gauge is good too. You have the advantage of the ammo generally and the shotgun being lighter. Also, if you might have another smaller statured shooter or something like that, there's some advantage to the 20 gauge. But I would encourage you, if it's your truck gun, have the shotgun. I would have a combination of buckshot and slugs. And I said for hunting, and I like number 4 buck for hunting and for personal protection, home defense. I don't like it generally loaded as my go-to round in my truck gun. For that, I do like the kind of standard double-aught buck because it's got more mass to each individual pellet, which means it will generally penetrate soft, not literally soft, but light barriers like sheet metal. So if I'm using a truck gun, there's a good chance I might have to shoot out of my vehicle and or into somebody else's vehicle. So I think the double-aught buck's a good choice for that, and it's pretty common. So for the truck gun, for a shotgun with a combination of buckshot and slugs, and I don't mean a buckshot and a slug and a buckshot and a slug loaded in a tube, but how I roll with mine is buckshot in the tube, and then slugs in the side saddle. And if you know how to do an ammo exchange drill, you can switch it out pretty quick. But again, that's one of the great things about the shotgun is its flexibility just by switching ammo. So get whatever ammo makes sense for you. Of course, in my truck, I'm going to have quite a bit of hunting ammo as well, because if I have to leave the truck and things get really bad, I want to be able to put meat on the table. And you probably should look up a whole other shotgun episode for that, one of the other shotgun episodes. But you decide what kind of ammo loadout you want for your truck gun if it's a shotgun. Do you want breaching rounds? Do you want signaling rounds? I would say at minimum, buckshot and slugs. You may decide you want other rounds in there. Also, I guess I should mention, I like rifle type sights on a truck gun shotgun. Either a ghost ring sight, or what I prefer even better is kind of rifle sights, meaning like an AK-47 style sight or one of your classic, like what you would see on an old school bolt action hunting rifle sights. I like those on a shotgun. I think they're a better all-around sighting system, unless you're talking about wing shooting, which a wing shotgun is a kind of a specialty shotgun in my opinion. For an all-around shotgun, I like those rifle type sights, but kind of what's in vogue today is the peep sight. They're okay, but something better than just a smooth barrel with a bead, in my opinion. Just what they would call like a defense shotgun with just a smooth barrel and a bead, I would consider subpar. I generally, because I have a lot of experience reloading and doing, quick reloads, I like a side saddle on the side of the shotgun with ammo. Some people like also having ammo on the side of the receiver. I like that less, and I generally don't do that, but I do like to run several rounds on the buttstock. Again, if it's a truck gun, I will generally have it loaded with double up buck, and I will have slugs in the side saddle. I can do a quick change drill. And I'm not telling you that's what you should be for your exact loadout or what you should do, but at least you have the option. I like some kind of way on the shotgun to hold extra rounds, and some kind of grab-and-go ammo supply, like a bailout kit. And I plan on doing a whole separate episode on bailout bags, but like kind of a bailout kit where I can grab the shotgun and I can grab the ammo, in my case, kind of a haversack full of shotgun ammo, throw it over my shoulder. The kit that I have actually has a thing on the outside for kind of go-to loads, and then a bigger compartment for the rest of the loads, just to grab, so I have quite a bit of ammo that I can just literally grab. But whatever system you want to run for your truck gun, if you decide to have it as your shotgun. I should mention another cool thing about most semi-auto and pump shotguns. Most of them, you may not think of them this way, but they're takedown guns. You have a big kind of nut on the front of the magazine tube, whether it's a pump or a semi-auto, that you can generally unscrew and take the barrel off, and it's a takedown gun. It'll fit in a lot of backpacks. A lot of times I'll run mine in my bug-out bag. It's my secondary go-to. Like if my truck gun, if I have like a PDW / a carbine, and that's my main one because I'm doing something else, but I still want the shotgun, then I'll put that inside the bag. I'm not going to need to get to it quickly. It's my tertiary gun. If I need an incognito kind of bag gun, it's there. So don't forget that most pump and semi-auto shotguns are also takedown guns. So a good, reliable, in my opinion, inertia semi-auto, or a good pump shotgun with buckshot and slugs and whatever else accoutrement you might want on it. Oh, and a white light. I forgot to mention that. I guess I usually think it goes without saying, but a white light and a sling on your defensive shotgun of any kind, whether it's a home defense gun or in this case a truck gun. For the truck gun, the same combination. A white light and a good sling. Anyway, that's been this episode of Truck Guns. This is installment number 5. Is a shotgun best for you for your truck gun? I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know your situation. Why we've covered this as a series. Shotgun has a lot of really cool attributes that are very unique, and it has a lot of drawbacks that are very unique. So there is no real perfect gun. There are better guns for different situations. I'm not here to think for you. I'm not getting sponsored by some big ammo or gun company. I refuse sponsors on this show. If you hear a commercial, it's because, if you know how podcasting works, I have a host. I upload these to the host, which in my case is Spreaker, and they put a bunch of ads in there. I have no say in what ads go in there, except for I borrow like illegal stuff like drug advertisements and stuff, or adult content. But other than that, I have no say in what kind of advertisement goes in the show, and it depends on where you listen, right? If you are in Alaska, you get ads based on Alaska stuff a lot of times. If you're in the Southwest, you probably get ads even in Spanish. It has nothing to do with this, but I have no gun or ammo sponsors. I'm not telling you to get this shotgun and this new crazy game-changing round because it's the best for when the Cuban paratroopers start coming out of the sky. I try to help you think critically about what may be the best choice for you. And in this case, what's the best choice for you for a truck gun? I don't know. I don't know your situation, but I can give you hopefully some guidance and some pros and cons. Anyway, my most common gun is a shotgun. Also, I should say, 50 state legal, unlike a lot of other guns that we've talked about. And that's a big advantage. If you don't know, my wife and I live as neo-nomads. We travel. We're blessed to have many guns, but a shotgun, I'm not aware of any state, even California, where you can't have a good defensive shotgun. No legislation banning this shotgun or that shotgun. I think Canada actually may, but as far as the United States, Again, put that as another advantage. But what's the best tool for you, for your truck, for your car, for your trunk? I don't know, right? Do you live in the wilds of Montana? Do you live in a cul-de-sac in Seattle? It's a big difference, right? I don't know. Do you love to hunt? Could you field dress a dove without even needing a knife? You have no idea how to hunt. If you shot a deer and it was laying in front of you, you'd have no idea what to do with it. I don't know you. I don't know. Again, not everybody's like me. A lot of people spend their entire lives in urban, suburban environments. I don't know you, but I do know, by God's grace, quite a bit about different kinds of guns and shotguns. And hopefully it's been a sobering look at not just a shotgun, but a vast array of different truck gun options. This may be the last installment of Truck Guns. I may do a wild card episode. Things that aren't their entirely individual category, but that you might choose. Well, what about a bolt action? What about a scout rifle? Or what about a bullpup this or that? I do a wild cards episode. So again, make sure you're liked and subscribed for that. But as far as main classes of guns, like fighting handguns, or PDWs, or fighting carbines, or the shotgun, probably it for that for now. Oh, in the wild card episode, I'll probably also discuss like a 22 rimfire. Anyway, with that, if I do the wild card episode, I'm not committing to that. But either way, make sure you're liked, subscribed, following the show. Oh, and I should mention, if you want to support the show, should not be a bad capitalist. If you want to support the show, again, because I have no corporate sponsors, don't want any bias here, you shall take no bribe. For a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous, the Bible says. If you want to support the show, it's supported by listeners. And also, people that step up to become a patron, they get a lot of cool special insider content. In fact, they got these Truck Gun episodes way before I put them out. And they get them commercial free. They get to talk to me if they want to all the time. So if you want to become a patron, consider becoming a patron. Be very humbled. And either way, thank you for giving me some of your time. I am blessed to serve you today. I guess with that, let's roll into the tactical tip and the tactical verse of the day. One thing for the tactical tip. A lot of people think about lubrication on firearms and think of it as a wet oil or a grease. There is dry lube. This especially a pump action shotgun in a vehicle, in a truck, especially in a dusty environment like the Southwest or even the Great Plains or somewhere like that where there's a lot of dust. Dry lube may make a lot of sense for this, and I have used dry lube very successfully in the past on pump action shotguns. I'm not here to recommend any one brand or kind, but there's a lot of different kinds of dry lubrication. The benefit of dry lubrication is that it does not attract the dust. The dust won't stick to it and make kind of oil mud, for lack of a better term. And if you've been in a really dusty environment with something coated in like CLP, like Iraq, you'll know what I'm talking about. Dry lube is a thing. If you're talking about a shotgun for a vehicle in a dusty environment, you may really look at dry lube, coating the bolt and the action bars and things like that with dry lube. Will a good pump shotgun run fine completely dry? It will. If you want to save some wear and tear on the gun, some metal on metal contact, the dry lube might be a good call. So at least look into it if that's an application that you're going to run your truck gun in a dusty environment. Tactical verse of the day from 2 Samuel 22, and it's not one of the verses I often quote from 2 Samuel 22. In my distress, I called upon the Lord and cried out to my God. He heard my voice from his temple, and my cry entered his ears. Whatever you're going through, whether it's praise or whether it's a time of trial and tribulation, I don't know. But I know it's always the right answer to go to God. It is never the wrong answer to go to God. In the midst of your depravity and sin, in your greatest joy and triumph, it is always the right answer to turn to God. God is always there. He always loves you. It's always the right answer to go to God. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day. Hey there, gun fighters. I think it's time we do Another episode on truck guns. Recently did a long series on that. Today we're going to do wild cards. We covered the broad categories, but what about the outliers? What about getting a little bit crazy with your truck gun? I don't mean crazy as in bad. I mean crazy as in just not an AR, right? Just something different. Not a standard loadout. What about the others? What about the wild cards? That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting tactics, use of deadly force the right way with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. Hopefully you'll forgive the subpar audio quality. This is getting recorded on my cracked and broken in several places iPhone, but it's kind of a throwback from days of yore. If you remember the first several years of Gunfighter Life, where I recorded on my phone when I was still a professional gunfighter. I think I started the podcast when I was a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify, and then for the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters. And I would record on my phone only a couple of times a year. But today I'm headed out to the range to do some rifle work, get some data on rifles and ammo and what they like. And hopefully, by God's grace, it'll be a blessed day at the range. So I thought, why not get this episode out while it's on the brain? Truck guns, wild cards. Let's get into it. Okay, so we've covered the broad categories. The PCC is a truck gun, the full-size fighting handgun, maybe plus size, the big girls of the handgun world. We've done that whole genre. If you haven't seen that, go back and listen. The AR, the AK-47 for truck guns. What about the outliers? Here's one. What about the little bitty baby of the truck guns, the 22 long rifle? Now, this was one of my truck guns up until recently when it got stolen. Sadly, when I went to Alaska, if you haven't heard, my wife and I parked in a guarded with people and gated place in Washington to store our truck when we went to Alaska. Still got broken into, still got the gun taken out of the back. This was one of the guns that I kept in the back of the truck was a Ruger 1022 takedown, and it was all kitted up, sadly. It was really good, had the good sights on it, had the good everything, but it's a good option for a truck gun, and here's why it stayed in the truck along with some other guns. I often talk about, you guys might not, but I often talk about what's the best survival gun if you can only have one long gun for the end of the world. And it often comes down to the shotgun versus the 22. And the big proponents of the 22 say the 22 is because you can carry so much ammo. So here's the thing, if you don't know, my wife and I live as neo-nomads, sojourners on this earth, as we all are, but we very practically so. We live large chunks off the grid, traveling around right now in the beautiful mountains of northern Idaho. And what happens is something, if a truck broke down, whatever happened, it was the end of days as we know them. You get stuck in a city in gridlock, and you got your Lamborghinis, right? You got your bug out bag and your Lamborghinis, and you got to walk. And my best chance is to walk to my nearest known bug out location. Now, if you guys were patrons, you'd have a lot of my bug out locations literally pinned on maps. So maybe I'd see you there when the peanut butter and chocolate hits the fan. But let's say my nearest thing is 500 miles. Well, better get on the Lamborghinis, put the pack on Alexander Hamilton or Rhodesian Ridgeback, grab the bug out bag, and start hoofing it. In that case, the 22 long rifle excels because I can literally carry 1,000 rounds of ammo easily. Can't do that with pretty much anything else. So you might consider that for your truck gun. Is it the best for defense? No. Is it better than harsh words? For sure. Reasonable rate of fire. If I was going this way, I would go semi-auto. I mean, it's hard to argue anything other than a 1022 if you have, something else that you really, really like. If you want to go uber light and you might be doing a lot of aquatic type stuff, you may look at the Henry AR7 because it floats. So if you plan on bugging out in a canoe or something like that, or just do a lot of water crossing, or you want to save the weight and you really, really are not a gunfighter, maybe you're listening to the wrong podcast, but it is just a food procurement device, a tool for procuring food. You might look at like the Henry AR7. I don't think the sustained rate of fire and the reliability is there, or the accuracy, although I might be wrong on the accuracy, compared to the Ruger 1022. But it's a solid option. The semi-auto, I like mine configured at least with good backup iron sights, as most 1022s come with. You may or may not decide to run an optic. If I was going to run an optic, if it's for a hard times use, nothing that takes batteries or that needs batteries, I would go with like a prism sight over a red dot, because if the battery fails, I can still use the reticle in the prism. So just something like that. Maybe you want to go with a fixed power, very small, lightweight optic. But there you go. If you want the creme de la creme of this world, you may look at the Tactical Solutions options. They make some really good stuff. But the 22, for sure, as a truck gun, and you may pair that with, sadly, as I did, one of my go-to 22 handguns, and one of the pouches, if you don't know, the Ruger 1022 Takedown comes with a bag, and you can fit a handgun in that bag. So you could have a handgun option and a long gun option. It doesn't weigh a lot in its own bag that you can just grab and go. So you might consider that for a truck gun option. Okay, let's go from mild to wild. We talked about the AR, and I generally talked about that in the vanilla, the Breyers Vanilla 223-556. What if you want to get big? How about the 458 SOCOM? Now, you would know about this if you're a patron. I did Guns for Sasquatch. That's right. Guns to take on Bigfoot. I do a lot of fun episodes. I get a little more loose with the patrons. I've done one on the zombie apocalypse, one on Guns for Bigfoot. But I talked about the 458 SOCOM. I worked once, I was the manager of a firearms and training company, and there were some guys there that were crushing hard on the 458 SOCOM. They had 458 SOCOMs. They loved the 458 SOCOM. I will concede that of the big bores, it's probably the best ballistically of like the 450 Bushmaster, the 458 SOCOM, the 500 Beowulf, or 50 Beowulf. Right, of the big bore ARs, the 458 SOCOM is a good option. Why? Why would you choose this for a truck gun when you lose so much capacity? Well, if it's good enough to take out a Sasquatch, it's probably good for going through car doors. If you're talking about a truck gun where you are likely to shoot through your car and into somebody else's car, that's a real thing if you do any kind of like real world training or real world scenarios. Like vehicle rammings are a thing. People take cover behind cars. Well, turn the cover into concealment with the 458 SOCOM. They make some pretty legit solid copper monolithic bullets made for this purpose, for like deep penetration on all kinds of obstacles. So get rid of those obstacles in your path, as old brother where art thou would say. So the 458 SOCOM, you still got your common AR platform. You can put good triggers in it. There's so many options for the AR, but maybe you want it in a big, beefy, knockdown, drag-out cartridge, the 458 SOCOM. So that's kind of a wild card there. Now, let us go from the more urban to the more rural, I would say. How about the Scout rifle? The good old Jeff Cooper can take a buffalo and, keep you alive out in the bush gun. The kind of designed as a practical rifle, a kind of do-it-all Swiss Army knife, if you want to call it that, the multi-tool of rifles. Okay. Especially if you live in a place where your shall not be infringed rights have in fact been infringed, where you can't have a high-capacity semi-auto. If you're like in Canada, where, I don't know the laws everywhere, but if it's not a semi-auto, there's no magazine ban limit, I don't think. So do you want a 5-round SKS, or do you want, I think that's what they're limited to. I know a regular SKS is 10 rounds, but I'm talking for the Maple Leaf guys up north in the Great White North. Do you want a 5-round SKS? Yeah, it's semi-auto. You get 5 rounds, which is not horrible. It's not a horrible choice. Or do you want a Scout rifle in 308 that's a bolt action where you can have as many rounds in the magazine as you want? And it depends on where you live, right? If I live, downtown Toronto, I'm probably going to pick the SKS. If I live in, 2 hours north of Calgary, I'm probably picking a Scout rifle. Geography plays a big part in that. especially if you talk about really cold climates at the far upper north end, like up near the Arctic Circle in Canada or places, where you might have to crush some ice with your bolt. I'd pick a nice controlled round feed scout rifle for that. Different environments, right? So the scout rifle for the truck gun. Or maybe you travel all up and down the Northeast, where you go from shall not be infringed, live free or die, as I did live in New Hampshire for a bit. I don't know if I can claim that but I lived there a fairly decent amount of time. I was also the head firearms and training instructor there for a gun company for a while. Live free or die state. You live there, but you got to go through a bunch of really infringy places where it's just so infringy it's not even funny. For that, maybe a scout rifle, right? Maybe that's a good option for you, because I don't know anywhere except for like Ohio where you have to hunt, but as far as having one in your vehicle, if you can have a gun, I don't know anywhere that restricts bolt action rifles. So you may look at the Scout if you want that idea, but you don't want a 308. They make what the community, the Scout rifle community, and they're like a I don't want to use the wrong word. They're a passionate group. How about that? They also refer to the smaller ones as Cub Scouts. You can get these smaller versions in 5.56. There are several options like the Mossberg MVP and things like that are Scout-ish. They would argue maybe that they're not true Scouts, but they call them a Cub Scout in 5.56. So if you want that and you want an intermediate cartridge, you might look at something like a Cub Scout, especially if you're somewhere like really remote Southwest where you're not dealing with big bears and things like that. The Southwest, you might run into some coyotes, some javelina, but that's really it. And the 5.56 will do fine for that. You want to carry more ammo if you have to cross big deserts on foot. You might decide to go with the lighter option. So either the Scout or the Cub Scout for a wild card. How's this for the wild card? The lever action, right? And I'm not talking about the abomination lever action of the lever action that had a baby with an AR. I'm talking about your old school lever actions. We talked about the bruiser of the 458 SOCOM. How about a 4570 for a truck gun, lever action? You know, there's a certain subset of the community that are very passionate about the 4570, much like the Scout rifles are with the Scout rifle. You know, the 4570. You live in real thick, dense areas, but you want a bruiser of a cartridge where long shots are not a big deal. Now, I know people that love the 4570 say, it'll kill a buffalo at 1,000 yards. It will if you have a known distance and you're walking in rounds and you have time to figure out the distance. But practically, it's a shorter range cartridge. But talking about going through vehicles, it's a big, heavy, moderate velocity bullet. And with proper bullet construction, those tend to penetrate pretty well. So, especially if you make your own ammo, load your own, there's a lot of versatility in a 4570. You can go from mild to wild in that cartridge. Unlike the 458 SOCOM, where you need a certain amount of power to cycle the weapon, the lever action doesn't. So you can go from mild to wild. If you want a little bit higher rate of fire and not so much of a bruiser on the shoulder, you can load them pretty mild, like original loadings, trapdoor loadings, or you can go hot and heavy. So 4570 as a truck gun. Now the ammo is heavy. But hey, if we're talking wild cards here, you might love the 4570 and more power to you. You also may want to go into lever action in a more moderate cartridge, but still really good. The classic 3030, it's a good, I would call that, and I think I did a whole episode and I called it America's first intermediate cartridge. You want a good intermediate cartridge, rock solid for medium-sized game, for defense. The 3030, you know, whether you're talking about the 150 or up into the 170 or even heavier now bullets, it's a good performing cartridge. So 3030 is awesome. Also, some really good options are the 44 Magnum /44 Special or the 357 Magnum /38 Special. That's probably the way that I would go if I were looking for a lever action truck gun. I just think there's a lot of versatility there in that cartridge. It may be one of the most versatile cartridges, period. And especially if you're a 357 guy anyway, a 357 lever action truck gun, you know, there's nothing heretical about putting like a more modern optic on the top, like the prism optic we talked about, something like that. Whether you're talking like the Vortex prism, I forget what they call it, maybe the Spitfire, or if you're talking like a primary arms, etched reticle optic. That way, if the batteries go out or something, or you don't even need batteries, but you can still get that fast firing capability, which lends itself to the lever action. That's a pretty cool wild card. And again, especially if you live in somewhere that's a little bit more infringy, that might be a good option, even if you don't live there. But the lever action, I think, is a pretty good wild card option. Here is one I'm gonna how about just your deer rifle? Instead of keeping it in a safe at home, why not keep it in your truck? You might think that's ridiculous. You could never use that for some kind of tactical scenario. Well, I would like to give you a little history lesson, not to be condescending, but you may not realize it. But what I would consider America's first active shooter was the bell tower shooter in Texas. And this happened at, I think, a college, some kind of scholastic facility. And this far predates Columbine. This is back in the day, as the kids say. Back in the day, there was an active shooter, bell tower shooter, shooting on a campus. And a cop who realizes what's happening and a citizen who realizes what's happening, the citizen grabs his scope rifle, I presume some kind of deer rifle, right, a full-powered rifle, scoped rifle, and goes up to the cop, who I guess deputizes him on the spot. And as the lure goes, check this for yourself, the guy says one of the coolest lines, if you're ever getting deputized, that I think has ever been uttered. And he looks at the cop, or says to the cop, "Are we playing for keeps?" That's the attitude we need to have. If it's time to change somebody's behavior, if they're doing evil things, it's time to change their behavior. But, what an American hero there that probably doesn't get the respect that he deserves. But if you look up the bell tower shooting, and that armed citizen and that cop joined forces and took out that bell tower shooter. They played for keeps. So I would say it's not ridiculous to think that a good classic bolt action full powered scoped hunting rifle is a decent option. It's certainly better than nothing. And if you already have one, there's nothing wrong with, even what I would call a fairly pedestrian 308 or 6.5 Creedmoor. It doesn't have to be crazy expensive. Savage Axis are crazy accurate in my experience. I've never seen one that was not a tack driver. Get a Savage Axis with whatever scope you want on there, good solid mounts. You're probably still into it less than $500. Well, I don't know with inflation, but probably, or if you want to go the Ruger American route, they're kind of one of the go-tos for budget rifles, or what's another big one? The Tikka T3, right? You get one of those, maybe even a compact model, but whatever you're comfortable with, right? If you have taken, a dozen deer with said deer rifle, it obviously shows that you're probably pretty competent with that rifle. Instead of keeping it locked up in a gun safe 11 months out of the year, why not get some kind of decent case or gun sock and keep it in the truck, right? I mean, you're talking about saving human life. So anyway, that's my last wild card there. The rifle that you're familiar with, that you put food on the table with, could also be a good option to protect yourself and your loved ones. And obviously it's good for putting meat on the table if it's your go-to putting meat on the table gun. So just some thoughts on wild cards for truck guns there.